This tutorial will show you how to do Bob's walk on graph paper. So the first thing we want to do is put in our 0, and we want to label our axes. So the first one I'll label is this one, which is distance. And we want a unit for that, and in this case it'll be meters. And our bottom, which is time. And our unit, minutes. The next step is to come up with appropriate scale. Now, in the case of distance, I think I'll go up in tens. Now, the maximum distance that Bob walked was 120 metres, so always go above that. So I'm going to go up to about 140. Okay, so here's my scale. Now, you'll notice that I drew lines next to each of the numbers. Now that's because when drawing a line graph, it's very important that your line indicates what line that number's talking about. So if you have a look, the lines that I drew here represent this line all the way across. Now if you were to have drawn your number here in between, which part has to do with the 10? Okay, it could mean that this whole area means 10, but that goes into column graph territory, okay, and then you lose the mark for scaling. So it's really important to have these lines put in place so that you know. Okay, so once that's done, you want to do the same thing with your time scale. Now in this case I'm going to go up in 2s. Okay, so here's my time scale. Now as you can see, I've gone all the way up to 40, a lot longer than we need, but it's best to have more than the exact number. So let's start plotting. Now, reading the scenario, Bob takes his dog for a walk in the park. He leaves the house and arrives at the park entrance. It is 20 metres from his home and it took him 2 minutes. So 20 metres, 2 minutes, that's where our dot goes. He walks to the end of the park, now that's 100 metres, in 10 minutes. So he's already walked the 20, so we want 20 plus 100, which is 120. And he's already walked 2 minutes, so we want to add our 10 minutes to that. So it'll be 120 at the 12-minute mark, which is here. Now, it is here that he stands for 7 minutes while his dog poops. So 7 plus 12 is 19, so our next point goes at 19, and that's roughly halfway. Okay. So now that he's waited, he walks back to the entrance of the park. This time it takes him 8 minutes. So he's back to the 20-metre mark because that's the 100 metres. And he's adding 8 to the 19 minutes that he's already spent on his journey. So we're up to 24. So that brings us here. And now the last part of his journey. He leaves the park grounds and walks home in 5 minutes. So that means he goes back to 0 and it takes him 5 minutes to reach 0. So 5 plus 24 is 29. So our last dot goes there on the 0 line. And the next thing we want to do is connect our dots. So from the 0, because his home is at 0, to the first dot, up, across, down, and down. Okay, so now look, my lines are a little shonky because I'm using a stylus on an iPad, but you get the drift. So that's what your graph should look like. Now there's one thing missing, we need a heading. So we'll call this Bob's Walk.